Hello, this is In the Studio, and I'm your host, Martha Teeter, and we're going to be talking today about serving homeless in Davis. And I'm very pleased to have as guest Marianne Kirsch, who is co-chair of the Interfaith Rotating Winter Shelter, and Carlos Matos, who, among his many hats, is a board member and past president of Davis Community Meals. Thank you for coming to talk to me today.
You're welcome.
Yeah, what we want to do is get kind of a sense of how the homeless now are being served in Davis, and overall what things are our challenges for tomorrow. So maybe we can start with the Interfaith Rotating Winter Shelter. Tell me a little bit about it. How does it work? Who does it serve?
The Interfaith Rotating Winter Shelter is a group of congregations in Greater Davis area that host the homeless people who are taken in at the intake, which is the Friends Meeting House, and then transported to the different host sites, which are the congregation sites. And we operate for 15 weeks in the cold weather months. And everyone is welcome who needs shelter to come to the intake. There they have an interview, and they are processed and evaluated as to whether they can take care of themselves at the shelter and keep a peaceful and respectable kind of an atmosphere at the shelter. And so then they are transported by cars. This is all volunteer. Volunteer people at the intake.
Yeah.
We have a lot of volunteers.
Yeah.
We have 1,700 volunteers on our listserv.
Wow,
yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah, I know. It's just a tribute to the generosity of the people of Davis, because they have done this now for 8 years. We just completed our 8th season. Started out 439 volunteers our first year, and now we have all those volunteers, and they are just a wonderful, compassionate representation of Davis people.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. And you were actually in the first organizing group, weren't
yes,
you? So you've been doing this for quite a while.
I have. And we started out as a task force in 2006, 2007, and then we had our first shelter season 2007, 2008. And
so after intake, then what happens?
oh yeah, so intake, they're interviewed at the intake. They have an initial interview, which is like more in depth, where we fill out a form for them, which we keep in a binder with information, their medical, their emergency information, and other, vital statistics. So that goes to the host site in this black box that we send along.
Okay.
And anyway, in case they need to know, what the medical emergency might be or whatever. Okay, so then the guests are transported to the host sites where we have either college interns or high school interns who register the guests, put them down for a chore, and then check them in and ask them, do you want a reservation for tomorrow? And we have a reservation list, so if they want to come back the next day, then they get preference on the reservation list. So then the high school or college interns, more likely the college interns, high school interns fill in at Christmas time. That's when it's at my congregation. We have it at Christmas time, and that's when the college interns are off on break. So we have our high school interns then. But anyway, they register the guests and they check them in and give them their sleeping bag. They're each assigned a bag that has their number. It's numbered, so we keep a list of the numbers, and we make sure that the person has their correct bag and the interns pass them out. Then the person sets up their cot or their mat, whatever they prefer, in the sleeping area. And then we serve dinner about maybe 6:45, depending on when everybody gets there. And the volunteers have come in and brought the meal and set it out. And it's usually just looking so good, nice homemade food.
Yes.
And all spread out. And then we have our circle where we give our announcements, and we give a big clap for the people who brought the dinner. And it could be different groups, like at my church, it's...
What's your church?
I'm St. James, yeah. It could be the Cub Scouts, it could be the St. Vincent de Paul, it could be the our outreach group, the Gospel Justice, the Women's Bible group, the Men's Bible group, different ministries within our church. They group together. And we also have the venture crew, the older scouts. And the families group doesn't. Well, we have 14 nights, so they're all filled.
Wow!
But with various groups, mostly. There are a couple nights that might not be, but anyway. So we are standing around. Then we have them in a circle, and we have a moment of silent gratitude because we are interfaith. So we don't say a prayer of our own faith expression. If the people at the sites want to do that, we just do that separately. And then say to the guests, if you wish to say a prayer in this faith expression, you can say it there. But at our announcement time, we just usually have a silent gratitude time. And then everybody claps for the dinner. People.
And do some of the servers then join the...
Yes, yes. The servers come out and they serve the meal, and when they're finished serving the meal, then they come and sit and eat with the guests. So the fellowship is a really big part of it, because this is where the barriers are broken down, and
definitely.
That's part of our goal. But our initial goal is just to provide emergency shelter and a hot meal for anybody who is in need. That's our main mission. But we also have other goals, like breaking down barriers between people and making people aware of who our homeless brothers and sisters are, and what they're like, and just to be able to sit down and have a meal together. And so, and then after that, there's a little time where they can have hospitality with the guests. Like sometimes they have a movie, or sometimes I think it was the Boy Scouts this year brought bingo in. And so there could be some kind of activity going on. We also had music at different evenings at different churches. Like the choir would come in at DCC and sing for a little bit.
Great.
Or we had some people who were musicians, just playing their instruments and just having some music for that part of the evening. And then at 10, it's lights out for the guests, and then they have to get up at 5:30 to do their chores and have coffee. And then the Mormon Church does the morning driving, helped by some of the other volunteers. They come and pick up the guests and take them back down to certain spots, the intake, or we also have Jack in the Box is another stop where they like to go and have coffee. There aren't too many people who are open at that hour in the morning. Yes. So anyway, Jack in the Box does that, and they're very nice about it. And so they are dropped off there for the day, and then if they want to return the following night, then they come to the intake at 5:30, and they are given if they've already gone through the main interview, they just have a quick interview. But everybody has an interview before they are going to the site. Yeah.
And you do training also for...
Yes. We have special training for the intake, and we also we have overnight volunteers that come in and stay all night. So they have training also. And
I think in our conversation before, you said they're authorized for tough love.
They are. They are. Well, we want to keep the shelter peaceful, and with everybody being respectful to one another. So if somebody is not cooperating with that, they are asked to leave. So we do empower the overnight guests to have that authority.
And then you also have emergency contacts too, if there is a problem?
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Well, we train the overnights to contact the police or fire department if there's any emergency. We have the numbers all down for them. Yeah.
Great, great.
Yeah.
And now how many sites are there? How many congregations
10.
are providing facilities?
Yeah, 10 of them.
10 of them. And then how many churches actually, or
But there are, I think there are
groups.
other churches that help, without
Oh.
providing sites.
I see.
Like they might bring dinners or partner with another congregation. If it's a smallish congregation, sometimes it's hard to get enough volunteers to cover all the nights. So,
And how many can you accommodate?
well, we go by the fire marshal because
okay.
he tells us how many we can accommodate because
Okay.
we are allowed to have 25 at certain sites, but at other sites we are permitted to have more because the fire marshal comes out and checks the sites to see, there are various criteria, like do they have sprinklers at the site?
Oh, I see.
What is the size of the site?
So it's between 25 and, say, 40?
40 plus sometimes,
40 plus,
because we've had this year as many as 43, 44, at certain times of the year.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, let's hear a little bit about Davis Community Meals, Carlos. What kind of services does Davis Community Meal Office offer to the homeless?
The Davis Community Meal title doesn't really reflect on all the things we do.
Yeah.
We do provide 3 meals a week, hot meals with dessert and salads and wonderful menus. 2 are during the evening, Tuesdays and Thursdays. The Tuesday meal, people lined up, and then they get served, and they get served. On Thursday, they get served like if they were in a restaurant. The tables are already set up, and then they're given their meal like if they were in a restaurant. There's always seconds, and at the end of the meal, they also can take stuff home. There's always umpteen amount of different kinds of breads and pastries and fresh vegetables and fruit that people can also take home. On Saturday, it's a lunch, but still it's a full meal. And then during the holidays, we also provide the meals. On top of that, we have a daytime shelter where people that are homeless or in need, they can come, get cleaned up, hang out. There's books, there's a social worker, there's alcohol and drug counseling. There's a lot of different services that they can get. And then we have an 15 beds, and that's the permanent shelter people that participate in a 18-month program, up to 18 months. And during that time, they have to leave the shelter in the morning and come back in the evening. They encourage to either get Social Security or get a job. And the good thing about this program is that they can get a job and then save all their money. They don't have to, So by the time they get done with the program, hopefully they can go out and get their own housing. So it's an indispensable service because for the homeless, housing is one of the biggest issues. We also have short-term places that we have throughout the community that families and people can go and temporarily stay there until they can get back on their feet. There's also permanent housing, like in Cesar Chavez and Eleanor Roosevelt, where they can, have low rent and stuff. People like they're in Social Security and hopefully Section 8 can able to afford to stay off the streets.
Excellent.
So that's quite a bit of what we do.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah. So let's look at a short video with a couple of stories about people who are homeless, because as we think about homeless, sometimes we have sort of images of those people, but homelessness could happen, and more they say that many people are one paycheck away from being homeless. So let's listen to the video.
I got a job at one of the big retail establishments around San Antonio. I was their second leading salesman. the day before Christmas in 2009, they came to me and said, Mr. Gillum, you're a little older than our paradigm allows us to be, and we think that we need to separate you from us. And that was a very emotional time, a very difficult time for me. After about 4 months of that, I became totally broke and ended up on the side of First Presbyterian Church, where I slept.
My wife and myself raised our kids. My son was killed, my father died, and my wife died, all in a 3-month period. I went pretty far down the hill, you know. I mean, I ended up out on the street for about 5 years. But where I was going, I wasn't long for the world.
I had been in retail for all of my career, 30 years. But eventually, because of kidney disease and arthritis in my feet and knees and hips, I just got to where I could not work anymore. Lost my vehicle, and then I was evicted, and I had nowhere to go.
So you can see from the stories that these people could be your neighbor, and just some event like a death in the family or losing a job can be completely devastating. I think all of you have encountered in serving the homeless, you put a face on that name or statistic. And I think Don Saylor, actually, I talked to him yesterday, and he pointed out in our next video about how we may feel an identification, but sometimes it's hard to help. So if we could have the next video.
When many people walk down the street, we see someone who's clearly suffering from mental illness, and maybe they're homeless, or we don't know where they go, but we do at some level viscerally understand that could be us.
Yeah.
And in one sense,
Yeah.
well, that calls on our compassion, and we see manifestations of that compassion every day. It also makes us uncomfortable. We know we could be there.
Yes.
Is one of the theories that I think I have, is that we could be there, but for some stroke of luck. And there's another aspect of those interactions. When we turn away, we think, I don't have to engage directly or personally because I pay taxes. I've already done my part, or I made a contribution somewhere. Mm-hmm. So we've tended to, in a sense, institutionalize our compassion and our charity instead of engaging directly in the life of our community.
So you can see that as he talks about, you may identify with a person on the street, but it's easy to push that away and give a donation and not become involved. And I think that the wonderful thing about the Interfaith Rotating Winter Shelter, you've already mentioned this, and Davis Community Meals, is that you put a face and a personality on those who have the misfortune of being homeless for a period of their life. Yeah, and I think it's critical to have that understanding in order, you both have many volunteers in your organization, and to have that compassion build up through interacting with the homeless. Let's just talk a little bit about statistics and demographics. I think the point-in-time count this year was 127, is that correct?
Yes,
Carlos,
I believe that's...
And that's about the same as it was last year. So how many homeless has the Interfaith Rotating Winter Shelter served this year?
Well, this year we served 133 individuals, but many of them come for quite a few nights during our 15 weeks. So they're repeated visits to the shelter.
Yes.
And we had one child this year. Now last year we had 7 children, but this year we only had 1 child. And last year, I think our total was 134 individuals, counting the 7 children.
Yes.
But this year it's 133 plus the 1 child.
Yeah.
Yeah, so 134 again.
So as you look at as I looked a little bit at the demographics of the age breakdown, and it seems like I understand nationally the average age of a homeless person is 38. In San Francisco, it's closer to 46. And I think that it's perhaps even a little older in Davis. I saw statistics that it was 50 in Placer County. So this is a chronic problem. And what are the problems for those on the homeless, and what are the other services available to them? What is needed here?
Well, homelessness is a serious situation, and it's very complex. There's a lot of reasons why people end up being homeless. We saw the examples in the videos of people that had some misfortune and ended up in the street. A lot of the homeless, unfortunately, are chemically dependent, alcoholic, drug addicts, mentally ill, people that have been in the prison system. They come out and have no way to shelter themselves, and it becomes like a chronic type of, and some people choose to live that style. But I think it's a combination of all those different factors. But I think mental health, alcohol and drug, and the prison system are the main causes of people being homeless.
Yeah.
And the worst thing is that there's no housing. You know, it's housing is the big deal. How do you help somebody that doesn't have a place?
So right now there is a lack of
Absolutely.
housing available
all
for
over
homeless.
all over the country.
Yeah.
All over the country, and California is no exception.
And California, the prices are higher. It's even dearer. We certainly don't have surplus.
And here in Davis is definitely
Yeah.
a serious issue.
Yes.
Affordable housing is the key.
Exactly. What we call affordable housing here is not really that affordable, in my opinion.
Yes,
That's
yes.
true.
In my opinion. Another facet of it is that Davis is a very generous community, and it attracts a lot of folks that come in to Panhandle. And that has become an issue with certain businesses in the downtown area. And so that's another facet of the homelessness situation here in Davis. Because of the generous community, a lot of people get attracted here.
Now whether those are the people who panhandle and move on or really stay overnight, I think there is still a population that's here overnight.
Absolutely.
And we are seeing that it's more years on the street, I believe, for people. So now in terms of services, you mentioned mental health and alcohol problems. What is there in Yolo County to deal with that?
Unfortunately, Yolo County's alcohol and drug component is almost non-existent.
That's incredible.
And the mental health department is in shambles. And I used to work there, and one of the reasons why I stopped working there because of the lack of services and the problems with the agency. But that's a statewide problem, and it's also a nationwide problem. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of people end up in the streets. As a matter of fact, you can see them in our community. They're talking to themselves, they're walking around looking like they're not there, and so a lot of them are mentally ill.
A lot of our volunteers have been surprised, though, that many of the homeless people that do come to us don't even look homeless. Sometimes,
there's that part too.
At the host site, it's hard to tell, like, who are the guests, who are the volunteers, because the people do have kind of stereotypes about what homeless people are like, and so that is really one of our goals, is to dispel that concept.
That's a really good point. So it's a combination. Some of them might not look homeless, but some of them definitely look homeless.
Well, they do, yes.
So there's a whole combination of folks that come into the picture. That's why I say it's really a complex problem. And the lack of resources and the lack of housing are the real crunch of things, because people do not get the help they need.
Yeah. So in Davis, there's no mental health services.
Well, no, that's not true.
No,
there is mental health services.
Okay.
It's not like it used to be. It's
okay.
it's
but
very
I understand
limited.
that in Woodland and in West Sac, you can get mental health appointments.
So in
But-
Davis too, they have
but
an
there
office
are-
here.
there are some in
They have an
Davis,
office
too.
here that
Okay.
that service
But
people,
not-
but
not enough.
Not enough.
Not enough. And then about detox, I think we mentioned in
That's
our,
a real huge problem.
Yeah, that's
the county decided to get out of the detox business once they closed Beamer Street, which had the detox and the 28-day residential treatment program. There's nothing else.
Yeah.
Sacramento shelters and detox programs do not take Yolo County folks,
Yeah.
and Solano
So
County
that's-
also will not take
that's a
Solano,
really big
Yolo County folks. If they identify themselves as being from here,
Yeah.
they will not be able to get in.
Yeah.
And that's very tragic because if you cannot get off the drugs and the alcohol, how can you make the next step in order to get out of the situation?
definitely.
So some of the key blocks to start stepping out of the situation are not there.
Yeah.
The stepping stones, I should say.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah,
right.
yeah. So we need a more of a concentration of services dealing with alcohol, drug addiction, and more mental health, as well as housing, and those are key needs that in Davis.
Absolutely.
And I think you mentioned also that besides involving the churches in the shelter, you wanted to also involve more of the community in the shelter.
Well,
as
we're
well.
hoping to reach out to the larger community. We have these wonderful, compassionate people who
Yes.
are helping us now, but we would like to kind of expand and have a larger conversation with the greater community. So we're
Yes.
working on that,
And
and in the process of trying to build on what we have.
Yeah.
Because, we've been doing it for 8 years, so we're kind of at a crossroads.
Yeah, I think that with what you've got and moving into the community, that's what we're going to need to solve these
Absolutely.
problems. Thank you so much for being my guests tonight.
Well, You're
very welcome.
And I want to thank you for listening. And if you want to listen to this show another time, you can find it on DCTV at the Davis Media Access website. Thank you very much for listening.